Please don't leave me again. Stay right here, okay? We can play later. Just don't run away.
When I saw the job ad, it felt suspiciously short. Pet sitter needed. 2 weeks. Live-in. Very generous pay. That was it. No pictures. No bullet points. No smiling golden retriever to soften the deal. Just a sentence and a number that made my rent look small and insecure. I remember staring at my phone and thinking, that's not how normal pet jobs are written. Normal pet jobs show you the pet. Normal pet jobs beg you. This one didn't beg. It assumed. That should have been my first warning. Still, money has a way of making logic sit down and mind its business. So I showed up. The mansion didn't look real. It looked like something designed to intimidate delivery drivers. Tall iron gates slid open on their own the second my car stopped. No guard. No intercom. Just a slow mechanical glide that made me feel like I'd crossed into a private movie set. The driveway was marble. Actual marble. My tires sounded disrespectful rolling over it. Cameras followed me the entire way up, quietly turning like I was already under investigation. I parked and sat in the car for a full 10 seconds, breathing, telling myself I was overreacting. It's a pet, I thought. A dog. A cat. Maybe something annoying like a parrot. The front door opened before I knocked. Mr. Park stood there, already dressed like he was about to leave the country and never look back. Calm. Perfect posture. Face completely neutral, like emotions were optional for him. You are here for the job, he said. Yes, sir, I replied, suddenly standing straighter, like my spine knew I was in a rich person's house. He stepped aside and let me in. The inside was worse. White floors. Glass walls. No clutter. No personal items. The kind of clean that makes you afraid to breathe wrong. My footsteps echoed like they were being recorded for later review. You will be watching my pet while I travel, he said as we walked deeper into the house. No problem at all, I said quickly. I love animals. That part was a lie, but a harmless one. I assumed this was the point where he would gesture toward a bed, a bowl, maybe a scratching post. Instead, he stopped walking. He turned toward the living room and clapped his hands once. The sound hadn't even finished echoing before something flew past my face. I didn't process it at first. I just screamed. Instinctively. Loud. Sharp. The kind of scream that empties your lungs and scares even you. A dark blur shot across the room, bounced off a shelf, grabbed a curtain, and launched itself upward. I looked up just in time to see a monkey land on a chandelier and start swinging back and forth like this was a daily routine. I froze. Completely. My body locked. My mouth stayed open. Every thought exited my head at the same time. The monkey screeched. The chandelier swayed. I pointed upward with a shaking finger. That's a monkey. Yes, Mr. Park said calmly. His name is Minsu. Minsu looked down at me and tilted his head like he was sizing me up. Then he started swinging harder. I laughed once. A nervous, broken laugh. I'm so sorry, sir. I think there's been a mistake. I don't do monkeys. Mr. Park glanced at his watch. I leave tomorrow. Minsu dropped from the chandelier and landed on the couch with a thud. He stared at me. I stared back. Neither of us blinked. I really think I'm not the right person, I said, already stepping backward. I'm more of a dog-adjacent type. Mr. Park walked to the counter and slid a paper toward me. I looked down. Then I looked again. Then I felt my entire sense of self-respect clear its throat and sit quietly in the corner. The number was real. Aggressively real. Minsu leapt onto a table and knocked something over just to remind me he existed. I swallowed. Hard. When do you leave? I asked. Mr. Park nodded once. And just like that I stayed. The exact moment Mr. Park's car disappeared down the driveway, Minsu changed. It wasn't subtle. There was no adjustment period. 1 second he was sitting calmly on the armrest, watching the door close. The next second, he looked at me like a prisoner who had just seen the guards leave their post. He let out a sharp screech and slapped his hands together. I stood there holding my bag, suddenly aware that I was alone in a locked mansion with an animal that had thumbs and opinions. Okay, I said out loud because silence felt dangerous. We're just gonna eat. I followed the instructions Mr. Park had left taped neatly to the refrigerator. Feed Minsu at 6 p.m. soft fruits first. Simple enough. I cut up bananas and apples, arranged them nicely in a bowl, and set it on the floor like I'd seen on TV. Minsu walked over slowly, looked into the bowl, looked at me, then he flipped the entire thing. Fruit scattered across the marble floor like it had been attacked. Banana slices slid across the tiles. An apple chunk hit the wall and stuck for a second before falling. I blinked. Okay. New approach. I refilled the bowl. This time I placed it on the counter. I took 2 steps back, hands up like I was negotiating with a hostage taker. Minsu jumped onto the counter, grabbed a handful of fruit, and threw it at the wall. One piece after another. Apple. Banana. Grape. He paused, examined the splatter, then threw another one in a different spot. He wasn't angry. He was testing something. Paint durability, apparently. I grabbed a towel and started cleaning before the damage became permanent. That's when Minsu grabbed the mop. Not the handle. The entire mop. And ran. I yelled, "Hey, no, give me that." He sprinted down the hallway on 2 feet, dragging the mop behind him like he'd planned this. I chased him, slipping slightly on fruit residue, my heart pounding like I was in a heist movie I didn't sign up for. Minsu leapt onto a shelf and shoved everything off with the mop. Decorative bowls shattered. Books rained down. A framed photo hit the floor face down, and I decided not to look at it. He climbed higher. I climbed after him. He knocked over a lamp. I screamed his name like it meant something. By the time I finally cornered him in the living room, the place looked like it had been shaken violently. My hands were shaking. My breath was short. I checked the time. 9:47 p.m. I locked myself in the bedroom after that. I didn't even unpack. I just sat on the bed, fully dressed, lights on, listening. At exactly 3 a.m. the lights turned on. Not mine. The house lights. Then the TV in the living room came on. Loud. Some dramatic music blaring. I sat up straight. Before I could move, something heavy landed on my chest. I screamed. Minsu was inches from my face. His hands pressed on my shoulders, his breath warm and fast. He stared directly into my eyes and screeched. I screamed back. Louder. Panic fully activated. We screamed at each other face to face, until lights started turning on in neighboring houses outside. Eventually, Minsu jumped off and ran. I stayed frozen on the bed, heart racing, fully awake, knowing one thing for sure. This was only the first night. By day 3, I had accepted that this was no longer a job. This was a hostage situation with snacks. I hadn't slept properly since Mr. Park left. My body existed in a constant state of alert, like I was in a nature documentary titled Predators That Look Cute But Will End You. Minsu moved through the house freely, confidently, like he owned the place and I was just a loud guest who hadn't figured out the rules yet. That morning, all I wanted to do was take out the trash. That's it. One bag. One step outside. One moment of fresh air. I stepped out, pulled the trash can lid open, dropped the bag in, and heard the door close behind me. I turned around slowly. The door was shut. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I laughed once. A fake laugh. Okay. Very funny. I knocked. Minsu. Open the door. Nothing. I walked around the house, peering through windows, waving like an idiot. That's when I saw him. Standing inside. On the stairs. Watching me. Calm. Still. He lifted one hand. Pressed the lock button. I stared at him in disbelief. You can't even pay bills and you know how to lock doors. Minsu screeched and ran off. I had to climb in through a bathroom window like I was breaking into my own nightmare. I scraped my arm, knocked over a plant, and landed on the floor out of breath and furious. That's when I saw the tablet. Mr. Park's tablet sat neatly on the kitchen counter, like it had been waiting for me. I knew I shouldn't touch it. I knew that in my spirit. But at this point, fear had turned into curiosity mixed with poor decision-making. Picked it up. It was already unlocked. The first headline filled the screen in bold letters. Former caregiver shot after pet monkey injured. I stared. Blinking didn't help. I scrolled. It got worse. There was a picture. I dropped the tablet like it had shocked me. My knees actually buckled. I grabbed the counter, breathing fast. Shot. Not fired. Not sued. Not terminated. Shot. I slowly turned around. Minsu was sitting at the dining table like a tiny mob boss. He had a fork, and he was dragging it across his teeth. Scrape, scrape. I whispered. Listen, I don't want problems. Minsu paused, looked at me, tilted his head. Then he threw the fork. It missed my face by inches and stuck straight into the wall. We both stared at it. He screeched proudly and ran off, knocking over a chair for emphasis. I stood there shaking, staring at the fork like it was evidence in a crime scene. I pulled it out carefully and set it down like it might explode. That night, I slept fully dressed. Shoes on, keys in my pocket, phone in my hand, lights on everywhere. Every sound made me jump. Minsu didn't bother me once, which somehow felt worse, because now I knew he wasn't just wild. He was strategic. By the fourth day, I had developed a routine built entirely around damage control. Wake up tired, clean something broken, apologize to the walls, keep Minsu in sight at all times. That last rule was the most important, and naturally it was the one I broke. I was in the living room cleaning. Again, there was always something to clean. A knocked-over lamp, scratches on the table, banana residue in places bananas should never be. Minsu was unusually quiet, which should have been my cue to panic immediately. Instead, I enjoyed the silence for exactly 3 seconds. That's when the alarm went off. Not a gentle beep, not a warning chime. A full, angry, house-wide alarm that echoed through the mansion like we were under attack. I froze. Then I saw it. One of the tall windows near the dining area was open. Curtains blowing gently. Cool air coming in. No movement. No screeching. No monkey. The silence after the alarm shut off was worse than the noise itself. It was heavy. Suspicious. The kind of silence that meant something terrible had already happened. Minsu? Called out. Nothing. My heart dropped straight to the floor. I ran outside barefoot, screaming his name like he was my missing child. Minsu. Minsu. I didn't care how I sounded. Panic had taken over completely. Cars slowed down. People stared. One guy pulled out his phone and started recording me like this was content. I searched everywhere. Trees, bushes, under cars, inside trash cans. I looked up at rooftops, squinting into the sky like he might be flying. Security showed up and immediately assumed I was the problem. "Ma'am, you can't be running like that," one of them said. "I lost a monkey," I yelled back. "Do you understand what that means?" They started chasing me instead of helping. 6 hours passed. 6 full hours of running, begging strangers, knocking on doors and explaining over and over that yes, it was a monkey, no, it wasn't mine, and yes, my life depended on finding him. Then someone shouted from across the street, "Oh, your monkey's stealing soda." I spun around so fast I almost fell. I ran into a convenience store and there he was, Minsu, standing on the counter, surrounded by snacks, eating candy like he'd earned it. The cashier was frozen. Customers backed away slowly. Minsu locked eyes with me and grinned. I lunged. He bit me. Hard. I screamed. He screeched. Shelves went down. Chips flew everywhere. The store alarm went off, adding to the chaos. I finally grabbed him and bolted. We sprinted all the way home like fugitives, me bleeding slightly, Minsu holding a candy bar he refused to let go of. When we made it back inside the mansion, I locked every door, collapsed onto the floor and laughed hysterically. Minsu climbed onto the couch, ate his candy and looked at me like I had overreacted. I realized then this wasn't a pet. This was an escape artist. After the escape, something in me snapped. Not emotionally. Strategically. I realized I could no longer live casually in that house. Casual living was for people without monkeys plotting their downfall. From that moment on, I switched into full survival mode. I fortified the mansion like I was preparing for an invasion. I locked every door, then locked them again, then tested them like I didn't trust myself. I moved furniture in front of certain entrances. I created rules and said them out loud, hoping the house cameras would record my intentions. No climbing, no running, no touching things that can kill me or set the house on fire. Minsu watched me do all of this from the top of the staircase, laughing. Not a metaphorical laugh, an actual monkey laugh. Short, sharp, disrespectful. The first act of war came from the kitchen. I heard water. Too much water. I ran in and found every faucet turned on full blast. Sink overflowing. Water spreading across the marble floor like it was claiming new territory. Min-soo stood on the counter, staring at the flood proudly, like an engineer admiring his work. I lunged for him. He jumped. I slipped. I went down hard, sliding across the floor on my back, arms flailing. Screaming his name like that meant anything anymore. While I was still on the floor, dripping wet and rethinking my life, I heard glass shatter. The lamp. He smashed the lamp. Before I could even process that, the oven beeped. I ran into the kitchen just in time to see the oven light glowing. On. I screamed. Why are you like this? Min-soo screeched back and ran. Then I realized something was missing. My phone. I patted my pockets. Checked the counter. Checked the couch. Gone. I heard footsteps upstairs. I sprinted. I chased him up the stairs, yelling threats I couldn't enforce. Halfway up, I slipped on a banana peel I didn't remember leaving there. My feet flew forward. I fell down 3 steps and landed in a heap, screaming and clutching my dignity. From above, Min-soo peeked over the railing. Wearing my wig. He jumped out screaming. I screamed louder. I lost it. Completely. Called security. They answered. I explained everything. The flooding. The escape. The oven. The monkey. There was a pause. Then they said, "We won't be returning." They hung up. I looked around the house. Water damage. Broken furniture. Food everywhere. My phone somewhere in a tree or ceiling. The place looked like a zoo riot had broken out and only one animal had survived. And it wasn't me. Min-soo sat on the couch wearing my wig crookedly, eating something he definitely stole. I realized then. This was no longer a job. This was a war. And I was losing. By the time Mr. Park's return day arrived, I looked like someone who had survived a natural disaster and then been asked to explain it politely. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My clothes were wrinkled, my eyes were permanently wide, and my nerves were so fried that even the microwave beep made me flinch. The house was in ruins. Not messy ruined. Scratches ran up the walls like something had tried to climb its way out. Furniture sat at odd angles, scarred and chipped. One lamp was permanently gone. Another leaned like it had seen things and didn't want to talk about it. I tried to clean that morning. I really did. But every time I fixed one thing, something else fell over. The vacuum scared Min-soo, Min-soo scared me, and we both scared the house. I finally gave up and sat on the floor, staring at the damage like it might apologize. That's when Min-soo made his final move. He leapt onto my head. Not my shoulder. Not my back. My head. He wrapped his legs around my neck and grabbed onto my hair like I was a moving piece of furniture. I froze. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. At this point, arguing felt pointless. "Please," I whispered. "Just for today." He ignored me and settled in. The doorbell rang. I nearly passed out. Footsteps approached. The front door opened. Mr. Park stepped inside. He stopped, completely still. His eyes moved slowly across the room. The scratched walls. The broken furniture. The water stains I had given up explaining. The silence was so loud I could hear my own heartbeat. Min-soo squeaked happily on my head. Mr. Park's gaze landed on him. Then to my shock, his face softened. He smiled. "My pet is safe," he said. That was it. No yelling. No questions. No police. Min-soo launched himself off my head and ran into his arms. They hugged. An actual hug. Min-soo wrapped his arms around Mr. Park's neck like they'd been separated for years. I stood there swaying slightly, holding onto the wall to stay upright. All the stress. All the fear. All the near-death moments over a monkey with a fork. And he was happy. I almost fainted right there on the marble floor. Judgment Day ended not with punishment, but with relief. By the time I finally realized my nightmare was over, my body had fully checked out. Every muscle ached. My hair was a tangled mess from Min-soo's assaults. My clothes were stained, wrinkled, and smelled faintly of banana, sweat, and panic. I had lived through floods, flying furniture, flying forks, and a full-blown monkey rampage. And now, finally, it was over. I didn't wait. I packed immediately. Not carefully. Not elegantly. I shoved clothes into a bag, grabbed my essentials, and prayed my shoes hadn't been stolen yet. They hadn't. But that didn't stop Min-soo from eyeing them like a hawk. Not today, buddy, I muttered. He squeaked indignantly, jumped on the bag and tried to drag it across the floor. I scooped him up like a criminal and set him down gently, warning him that this wasn't a negotiation. He just looked at me, blinked once and scampered off to plot his next prank. Mr. Park, calm as ever, handed me the payment. I stared at the check like it was a trophy from surviving a war zone. I half expected him to ask detailed questions about the state of the mansion, the floods, the broken lamps, or the stolen phone. He didn't. Not a word. All he cared about was that Minsu was safe and apparently happy. I pocketed the check, slung my bag over my shoulder, and prepared to walk out. Minsu tried to follow me, obviously thinking he could get away with one last prank. I shooed him and he squeaked as if mocking me, then leapt onto the couch like a tiny victorious general. I stepped outside, breathing deeply, tasting freedom. The gates closed behind me. The mansion grew smaller in the rearview mirror. But the memory of chaos, fear, and sheer monkey-fueled terror would stick with me forever. That's success. Survival. Victory in the smallest, loudest, and most unexpected war I'd ever fought. I had lived through floods, flying bananas, stolen phones, thrown forks, and an assault on every ounce of dignity I owned. And I survived. Now whenever someone says, "easy pet-sitting job," I laugh. Hard. Bitterly. I laugh because I know the truth. There is no easy pet-sitting job when the pet is a monkey. There is only survival, strategy, negotiation, and the occasional full-blown chase through a convenience store. I survived a monkey, and barely survived myself. From that day forward, I carried a little more caution in my soul, and a lot more disbelief that this was a real job. Every time I think about it, I can't help but smile nervously and remember, it wasn't a pet. It was a tiny, furry, plotting mastermind who almost destroyed my life, and somehow we both made it out alive. And honestly, that's a story worth telling.